Rassie and the case with World Rugby, the decision has come out yesterday. I've read through the 80 pages. It's a publicly available document if you want to go and have a look through it. It can be a bit tedious, but anyway, we'll go through some of the key points. You guys can let me know your thoughts on the case. It's a bit of a divisive one. I've virtually read like so many different news sites, Facebook pages and Twitter, which is always toxic as heck. But yeah, people are getting pretty either up in arms or, pointing fingers at him. So never things are black and white that much, folks. It's always a wee bit grey. But yeah, what happened? Well, the Independent Disciplinary Committee, whatever it was, that's the English QC, who's not an employee of World Rugby, a New Zealand QC and a New Zealand District Court judge. That's the commission. They had a look at the case against Rassie, which was mostly, it's not about, hey, was he right or wrong about his points against the referee? Not about that. It was just about, was his conduct not meeting with the World Rugby Code of Conduct, basically? Like, did he bring the game into disrepute? Did he, something about what I wrote down? The integrity of match officials, like impinging on those, denigrate match officials, that kind of thing, basically. So that's what they're talking about. So they talked about things like uploading the video to Vimeo, not having any password protection on it. It was just an unlisted file, and they kind of suspected that it would get leaked because of the nature of some of the comments. And because of that, they basically found that this was a deliberate act. And Rassie in the video did say, like, if I get punished, I'm not a member of the Springboks when I do this. I'm just an independent party, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like Rassie knew what he was doing, personally. And yeah, he was just peed off, wasn't he? He was peed off about the refereeing, and he was peed off about Gatland in the build-up. And I know a lot of people talk about Gatland as well, kind of starting it. And he did have some comments in the media. Not hour-long videos, but, Gatland was certainly doing the typical stirring of the pot. On a side note, the media kind of stuff does grind my gears a wee bit about, like, how the whole, you can't, the people associated with the teams aren't really allowed to talk about match officials, but they get asked a million questions about it in the media, which is kind of just daft, right? But anyway, that's just an aside. But yeah, so they found him. They didn't use the word guilty. They said the points have been proved, but on these things like bringing the game into disrepute, impairing the integrity of the match officials. So what's going to happen? He's going to get a 10-month match day ban, so no media, no attending the games. No more feedback for 10 months, and a 2-month suspension of all his duties, the rugby-related duties. So no rugby stuff for him for 2 months, which is director rugby is massive. 10-month match day ban is through till, was it 30th of September next year, so it's quite a long time. And then he's got to give an apology as well to the match officials. Saru's been implicated as well for basically not pulling Rassie in line. So they've also gotten a warning as to their future conduct, like Rassie, £20,000 fine, and also been asked to issue an apology. That being said, they are appealing, so this matter is not over yet. Now, there was a little bit of talk about, like, man, why did this take so long? They've been dragging this out for ages. Now they're dropping this decision right before the England game. They did address this, if you want to go and read the 80-page document, about why it took so long. And their reasoning is basically they wanted to get all the hearings and witnesses and whatnot kind of done within a short space of time. Like, they didn't want to have one person speaking early and then a delay. So they wanted to make it kind of fair by getting everybody to speak around about it at the same time, witness testimony and all that kind of jazz. And they basically said it was just the scheduling, because there's so many parties involved around different parts of the world, all doing their own different things, that it's hard to get everyone, and this is the earliest time they did it. Funnily enough, I used to work at the High Court in Auckland, and I did a bit of scheduling, and only the minor scheduling, and it sucks. It sucks to try and get all the different parties. I was in criminal, so we didn't have to worry about the defendant because they were usually in prison, so we could summon them when we wanted to. But the lawyers and any witnesses or scientists who are involved, like to give evidence, all that kind of stuff. When you got loads of people giving evidence, it does suck trying to get everyone who's got a free time at the same time, and it usually gets pushed out for months. So kind of not surprised. Does make sense from my different but personal experience with kind of court-related stuff. And I should say, the document itself, if you want to go read it, has a bit of legal stuff at the start, which is also a bit dry. But there you go. Some of the more interesting stuff in the actual decision was interesting because if you scroll to the bottom, you can actually see some of the exchanges, emails, WhatsApp messages between the likes of Rassie and Nick Berry and Joel Jute and, Jaco Piper. And there's a little bit of disagreement about some of the facts, which is kind of interesting to read. Like, it seems like after the game, Rassie spoke to Nick Berry about wanting to send him some clips to get his feedback on. And it seems like in the first instance, Nick, you go read the document yourself. Don't take my word for it. But from my recollection and my notes, Nick was kind of like, okay. But then he spoke to Joel Jute about it, who was kind of like, well, that's a bit weird. You probably shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. But then he also spoke to Jaco Piper about it, who said, yeah, you should talk to them about it, because if you don't talk to them about it, again, I'm paraphrasing, go read the document, then you're more likely to get stuff in the media. But Jaco Piper denies that that Nick Berry mentioned there's a threat that I'll publish it to make it go viral. Whereas Joel Jute apparently and Ben O'Keefe said that, yeah, Nick mentioned that if we don't reply to it, then something's going to hit social media. So, eventually Nick Berry, before the video came out, did go back to Rassie with the list of, I agree with this one, I don't agree with this one, there's the reason I did this one. He gave him a full list, but Rassie kind of replied back with, it's a bit late now because I've already, he wanted to get the selections done for his team for the week, which the officiating staff apparently unanimously agreed is not a legitimate reason. There you go. It's a bit of he said, she said stuff by them saying who the referee or the previous week's referees calls don't matter about team selection. That's never been a thing in the past. It's news to us. So, Rassie sends Nick Berry an email to say, like, heads up, we're going to kind of do something similar to what Warren did last week, although ours is going to be more fair. And, Nick kind of replied politely back, and then the next day the video is recorded, and then a day later it kind of comes out. So it's messy. It's pretty messy. But yeah, like I said, there's an appeal coming, so nothing is going to be set in stone yet. As I mentioned, it's all a bit grey. Rassie was frustrated. The officials in their own capacity seem to be a little bit confused as to what the best course of action is to be. Eventually, they did get a firm kind of plan where Joel said, like, everything needs to come through me in terms of feedback stuff, which would have been good to know from the outset, because, if you don't have a clear plan, then that kind of gets frustrating and confusing. So, there's a piece from Nick Berry at the end about the effect he's kind of suffered from it, and I do feel for him, man, because I know refs don't get any sympathy from rugby fans, but he's basically said that this incident's kind of tarnished his whole career as a ref, and I know people, as I said, won't have a heck of a lot of sympathy for him. They'll say he should have got the refereeing calls more correct than he did, but it is kind of tough that one game is going to tarnish his whole refereeing career, because he'll always be known as the guy who Rassie did the video about. So, it's a pretty, go read it. There's some interesting stuff there. As I said, I've just kind of summarized some of the stuff that's going on. But you guys let me know what you reckon. I know it's a pretty divisive one. Personally, I'm not a fan of bringing the refereeing painstakingly, going through it with a comb, fine-tooth comb to look through every little refereeing decision. It's not my cup of tea. But, I know people do get frustrated with refs, because my old man, after every single game, when he calls me to comment about the game, his first comment is inevitably, it's never about a great try or a poor kick or something about a player. It's always about the bloody refs. So, I know it's a thing, but there you go. You guys let me know your thoughts. What do you reckon? It's going to go on, as I mentioned, the saga. But for now, those are the punishments we've got. Do you think they fit the crime? Too lenient? Too harsh? And you guys have any thoughts? I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.